GW. The magnificent MagMongoSlade. The magnificent GW. The magnificent MagMongoSlade.
Whining Ronda Rousey is back. Oh, brother. So she's upset about MMA fans and how they treat legends. And I'm going to talk about this in a longer form because Ronda and a lot of other people don't really understand wrestling fans. And the thing is, wrestling is not a sport. It is not sports. So the fan base interact with the product a lot different than people interact with sports. Wrestling fans don't interact with wrestling in terms of championships and titles and wins and losses and statistics because it's all a work. They interact with it in terms of emotional content. They look at these guys, some of them as role models, as superheroes, as, you know, people that they look up to. So they are very different from athletes. Very few athletes cross over into the role model. I want to be like him. Allen Iverson was like that. Michael Jordan was like that. Kobe Bryant was like that. Some football players rarely get that much because football players wear helmets. That's one of the things that I learned a lot. That was a very interesting psychological thing, is that football players are often not people's role models because they wear helmets. Nobody knows what they look like. But basketball players, boxers sometimes are, like Joe Louis was one, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson was another. He wasn't a role model, but he was a guy that people was emotionally connected to because they watched him from when he was young to becoming the baddest man on the planet, from Kid Dynamite to Iron Mike and all that kind of stuff. So Ronda Rousey is trying to figure out why MMA fans don't seem to care so much about their legends. So let's listen to what she's got to say here.
MMA fans and media are the most "what have you done for us lately" crowd of any sport. Like, you look at WWE and they have such a reverence for their legends. And at MMA, it's like the second that you're not on top, you're not shit and you never were shit. Chuck Liddell, when he's on top, oh my God, he's the best. The second that he loses, oh, Chuck Liddell ain't shit, he never was shit. Rampage Jackson, oh my God, he's the next Mike Tyson, he's so great. Second he loses, oh, Rampage ain't shit, he never was shit. Yeah. GSP, oh, he loses, he's not shit, he never was shit. I think the only reason that why MMA fans have their lips so firmly planted at the base of Khabib's cock is because he retired before he reached his limit. And if he kept fighting until he reached his limit, everybody would be like, oh, Khabib ain't shit, he never was shit. And they're like that with everybody. Like, name one person. I mean, Brock ain't shit, he never was shit. Name one past champion that has that the kind of respect that the current champions do. It's really sad because I think it encourages people to try and get out while they're peaking and taking all of that equity with them instead of passing it on to whoever's next to take up the mantle. I wanted.
All right, so she's not wrong, okay? She's not wrong, but this is what happens when fans are dealing with something that is a legitimate competition. Because as legitimate competition evolves, you become an antique. You become passé. You know, a lot of basketball fans, they remember very vividly, the moment they saw Allen Iverson cross up Michael Jordan. They're like, okay, this is a new game. All right, Michael Jordan is an old fogey. Allen Iverson has started something new. They remember the moment that guys like, if you're a really football fan, you remember the moment Joe Montana ended up on the Kansas City Chiefs. You're like, yeah, this is not, the game passed them by. It's not the same anymore. The same as when Brett Favre ended up playing for like the Jets or something like that. You're like, yeah, I don't know. Now, these people don't, always diminish these performers years later, but there's always a rush in the media to say that this new guy is the GOAT. LeBron James is the GOAT. Well, Kobe Bryant is barely in the ground. Like, for God's sake, Michael Jordan is still alive. We've lived through his greatness, but there's an instantaneous, this guy's the best guy of all time. This guy's, the best athlete. He's yada, yada, yada. And she's right. They do that. You don't get that in pro wrestling. You get the opposite, where everybody knew is shit, and everybody from the past, regardless of who it was amazing. So you'll see people sit around talking about how great the Z-Man was. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Nobody cared about the Z-Man. Nobody ever cared about the Z-Man. You know, but because you saw him on a 1992 WCW tape, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this guy's great. It's like, no, he's not great. But that being said, a lot of the guys that were great were legitimately great. And the reason why the fans still love them, like guys like Terry Funk, guys like Nick Bockwinkel, guys like Harley Race. Harley Race got disrespected recently by people comparing him to Jon Moxley. And we saw, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was quite a few people who were saying, yeah, Jon Moxley is much better than Harley Race ever was. That's kind of ridiculous. And you rarely see that kind of jabberjawing by wrestling fans. Most of them don't do that. Now, they do that with guys that have fallen out of favor. Guys like Hulk Hogan, for instance. You know, Hulk Hogan's a racist, so everything he ever did was garbage. He's trash. He's yada, yada, yada. Because there's an open lane to trash and to dump all over him. But usually, wrestlers, they gain in fan base over time. Like, Sid was more awesome before he died than when he was around. Like, he had a lot of fans at the time. And you know, the mid-90s, when he was bouncing back and forth between WCW and WWE, he had a huge fan base. You know, and it was growing because people were sharing clips of him. And, you know, you interact with wrestling a lot differently. You know, the idea of Sid being funny, him saying funny things, him doing funny things, then the funny stories of him, you become more like attached to him in that way. People don't really become attached to athletes like that. You know, they're taught that out with the old, in with the new stuff when it comes to athletics, because that's how athletics move forward. That's not how wrestling moves forward. Wrestling doesn't say, well, this guy can do a moonsault, therefore he's the best now. He does the best moonsault now. That's not how wrestling works. So the fans interact with it differently. When you're watching real sports, you can watch people diminish in real time. In wrestling, even if a guy is physically diminishing, he may still not lose being over. Randy Savage, for instance. When he lost a lot of his physicality, he couldn't go in the ring like he could a couple of years prior. He was still Macho Man Randy Savage, and people overlooked the fact that he couldn't physically go anymore. Scott Steiner, like the last 10 years of his career or something like that, he wasn't the big bad booty daddy from 1999, 2000 or 2001. He was washed. But he was still Scott Steiner to all these people. He was still Scott Steiner, and he could still be Scott Steiner, which means everything that encompasses Scott Steiner is not diminished. He physically can't go anymore, but he can go out there and call people fat asses and make people laugh. It's that simple. Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's diminished. He's 48, but he can still do jumps off the ladder, and people will still pay attention to it, even at 48. Even if he can't go as long as he and hard as he used to, he still got something. There's still some juice in the tank. And since wrestling is not 100% athletics, it's only like 40% athletics, you can go longer as a pro wrestler, even if your physical prime is over. So I get why she's saying that, and I understand it, and I can appreciate it. But I recognized a long time ago that the way wrestling fans interact with the product versus how sports fans interact with the product is a lot different. Wrestling fans interact with their product a lot like people who are fans of actors, like Robert De Niro, or Mel Gibson, or Bruce Willis, or something like that. Like, you're a fan of that guy, you'll watch movies that he's in. If he goes from one movie to the next, you just follow it. It's like if a guy goes from one wrestling company to the other, you'll follow it. It's that simple. It's kind of like that, While sports and athletes, sometimes they are taught that they're a fan of the team, not necessarily of a player, but of the team. Now that's, the case sometimes, but most of the time, people are fans of the individual athlete. So that's something that we can discuss, and I think that that's fun. But Ronda is very frustrated, obviously. She's feeling disrespected because people said that, hey, ever since she lost, she was washed and she was never any good anyway. And that is becoming a talking point, that Ronda was never any good, which was very funny because she was so dominant for so long. You can't really say she wasn't any good. You could say that people figured her out because that's what happens. The game evolves. Eventually, you fight enough, you play enough games, people figure it out. Especially if they're professionals and they're on your level, they figure you out. And that happens to everybody in athletics. So, she shouldn't be ashamed of it. She did bail, on MMA, and that's part of why people don't like her. But I get why she feels this way, But, yeah, wrestling fans are different. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.